Psalm 15, good stuff. Just every phrase should be harvested. So that's what we're doing. Beginning in verse 1, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? Then here's David answering his own question. The one whose walk is blameless. We talked about that last time and how we're talking about whose lifestyle, whose general patterns are lived intentionally within the boundaries of God's will and ways, his law, his design. By the way, you already know from your own life's experience, this does not happen accidentally. I don't know of anybody who has a blameless walk by accident. There are times when, we we accidentally obey God's design, because there are times when my desire, unintentionally, I keep using the word accidentally, but it really is accidental. When my desire aligns with God's desire, that's great, and it works out really well, but it just doesn't happen often enough. When your walk is blameless, it will be because you have intentionally oriented and structured your life to align with God's design. Then he says, the one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous. Well, that's how you get a blameless walk. Righteous is except for in the 70s, righteous is a word that has virtually no connection to our conversation outside of religious biblical thought. There were in the 60s the Righteous Brothers, and there was a period of time in the 70s where, dude, that's righteous. Pretty much those are, they have meaning, but they're not connected to the meaning of this particular word in this context. To do what is righteous it's not complex. It means to do what is right. What is right? Well, okay, there are a couple of ways to look at what is right. One, which I think is the most black and white, is there is a difference between what is right and what is wrong. And our culture seems to constantly be make an attempt to blur that line. This is, in my opinion, is one of the primary features of postmodernism. And I'm not going to get deeply into it, but we are in a very postmodern culture. The lines between right and wrong are very fuzzy. And the truth for a lot of people is they no longer exist. For some people, there's no longer anything such as right or wrong. That's a pretty horrible way to live, honestly. Actually, it could be almost a fun way to live, because if this is true, then I just do what I want to do. The problem is God didn't create and orient the universe to support that very well. There are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. See, I don't think it's possible to live without some kind of morality. And that's what makes us live within this context of right and or wrong. Okay, so that's if you do what is right, that's righteous. And how do you doing if you can do what's right, it means there is a way to identify what is right. And if something is not right, then it's wrong morally. Well, what about the gray areas? What about I'd grown up in the 60s and high school in late 60s and early 70s. Used to be this thing I think they called it the survival game. You're on a raft in the middle of the ocean, and they present you with moral dilemmas. What would you do? What would be right and what would be wrong? And every morally right decision carries a difficult consequence. So you're forced to mentally work with the gray areas where it's not just obviously one thing is right and the other thing is wrong. If you didn't have to deal with that kind of stuff, good for you. I still have memories of it, but our world has kind of I was going to say it kind of slipped off the rails. No, it didn't slip off the rails. It jumped the rails by forsaking the concept that there is such a thing as right and wrong. Now, there is this morally right and morally wrong thing. And then there's, I know I'm splitting hairs, but we're splitting. This particular hair is, I think, there are things that are pragmatically right or wrong. Now, what makes something pragmatically right or wrong? That's not very difficult, actually. What makes it right or wrong is either it works or it doesn't work. If it works, it's right. If it doesn't work, it's wrong. That's the perspective that the world, the culture that we live in today, basically works from. How do you know it's right? Because it works. Now, there are people who say, well, the way you did it didn't work, but we can do the same thing and make it work, and that will make it right. I suppose there are things of which this is true, but not very many. So, the one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous. This is a matter of choice and behavior. The one who does what is right. There's quite an interesting difference between knowing what is right and doing what is right. I think you can even philosophically choose what is right while not doing what is right. And there are a lot of people who could probably tell you the difference between right and wrong, but that their behavior, their choices, their execution on their choices doesn't put them over in the category of doing what is righteous. I sometimes counsel people who have begun to develop patterns and habits in their life that they know are, in this moral sense, wrong. And oh, by the way, as a result of that, their life is not working out well. So they come to me, and one of the things that we try to do is unpack and figure out, why is your life not working well? Usually it's a matter of poor choices. Well, if it was just as simple as, well, then, okay, let's begin making right choices. That would not be easy. I mean, that would be very difficult. But you see, when we make poor choices, there are always consequences. And sometimes the consequences of poor choices are far-reaching, meaning sometimes it's not just as simple as saying, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to choose that anymore. Sometimes it is that simple, but often, okay, life will only work if you don't keep choosing that way. But oh, by the way, Because you have chosen in that way, there is collateral damage of consequence that you're going to have to deal with. The folks who are most serious about their life, their walk with Christ, and their relationships will do the work to clean up the messes. And the 12-step recovery program calls this making restitution. Everything can't be, you can't make restitution for every bad mistake, but there are some poor choices. It would be silly of us not to, and it is very possible to make restitution for those things. Well, okay. Gosh, I'm just rambling. Well, let's bring it back to center. The one who does what is righteous. It is a matter of what I do. Yes, it's a matter of what I think and a matter of what I feel. It's involved all three, think, feel, do. All three pieces of who I am and how I interact with life. They are present there. But eventually it comes down to, do I do what is righteous? Two questions. Number one, do I have enough background to know what is right? And number two, then do I have enough fortitude to do what is right? All right. The one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart. Every time the word truth appears in Scripture, I feel poked, because I have grown up under a structure within the world that has become less and less clear on the truth, where truth has become more and more and more relative. And now, at this point in my life, I believe that truth can be identified and it is objective. But I live in a world that says it's only mean people act as if there was the truth. Don't I have my truth? Well, you may have your truth, but that's not my truth. Thank you, Oprah. Well, the Bible leaves no room for the idea that there is your truth and there is my truth. The plan of Scripture is really clear. There is the truth. And if it isn't consistent with the truth, then there's only one thing it can be: untrue. David says the one, okay, we get a person whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart. Speaking the truth is very difficult sometimes. If you ever want to find out how difficult speaking the truth is in our culture, jump on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and talk about the truth. There are people who understand and interpret life the way you do from a biblical point of view are going to be encouraged, and they will be encouraging. But there's a host of others who will not be. They don't care about you speaking what you think is the truth. If you really want to stir the waters, if you just want to smack the hornet's nest, get into politics on this. We're not talking about opinions. We're talking about objectified, objectifiable, reliable, verifiable truth. The one who speaks the truth, they will stand out. There are a lot of folks in the world who they will speak the truth as long as it works to their advantage. And usually the way they speak the truth is they'll kind of help the truth along by making it more palatable. That's a dangerous edge to walk on. We're going to pick it back up with a little more thought and talk about truth next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.